What's going on, guys? Welcome back to Pat Outdoors. Hope you're having a great week. We are back today with the Razor MX500 snow bike project. We're finally gonna wrap up the front end so we can at least get this bike ready to ride on some snow. And today I'm gonna be going over how I'm adapting a ski to the fork using this custom adapter made by Bike the Slopes in Canada. Let's get started taking this thing apart and throwing on the ski. In order to take the front wheel off of your Razor MX500, 650, or SX500, all you're gonna need is a 17mm and a 14mm wrench. The 14 holds the axle in place, while the 17 takes the nut off the other side. And while I have the bike apart, I'm likely gonna knock off some of this surface rust. This is an older bike, so we're gonna freshen up the look. Just to go over all of the parts that I'm using for this project, here's what I have purchased. A pair of Salomon 90cm mini skis. You can obviously use whatever skis you want or have already. I just thought that this was the most appropriate size for the size of this bike without having to trim it short. I think the length is appropriate. And then here's the kit that I got from Bike the Slopes. It is actually full kit meant to convert like a mountain bike into a ski bike. So these are actually all the parts you would need to do that complete, but I'm only going to be using one of the adapters and one of the skis for this project, since obviously we're driving it with a studded rear tire. I might use the other ski, other adapter, and the rest of the parts for a different project at a later date. In order to mount the adapter onto the ski, I'm going to be using these factory pilot holes to line up the bracket. I think they actually line up pretty nicely with the adapter. So we're going to install some two-sided tape in between the ski and the adapter first, and then I'm going to mount it in place using the two pilot holes. And we're going to drill the other 4 outer corners with an 1/8 inch drill bit, just to make a small pilot hole for the rest of the self-tapping screws to fully mount it in place. The bracket mounted nice and clean on the ski, very symmetrical. And in case you're wondering, no, I did not drill through the ski. You barely have to drill through the surface. It's simply to get the self-tapping screws to break through. So something interesting happened while I was knocking off the surface rust from the fork. The components look so much better without all that buildup on the surface. Looks nice and polished now, but this right post actually shot out of the housing like an extra 4 or 5 inches compared to the left side. The left one is still nice and stable in the housing. This one is now a little loose. It's almost like something came undone up here on its own while I was grinding the bottom side. And unfortunately, I don't have the proper tool or socket to reach down into the fork to loosen and tighten that Allen bolt to take this thing apart. Luckily, I do have a spare MX650 fork laying around that I took off for my off-road project. And fortunately, this one has some play, but it has a lot less play than this, and it's about the same as this one. Actually, you know what? This one might be in better condition overall, so we're just gonna swap out the fork. The replacement fork now installed, we can now go back to working on mounting the ski on the fork. And to do that, I'm using these M10 by 1.5 threaded rods. These are 250 millimeters long, which is probably a little too long. I'll just trim it short when we're all said and done. These brackets, I now realize, are actually meant for 3/8 axles or studs. So the M10 is definitely a snug fit. I'm actually gonna hollow that out a little bit with the 3/8 drill bit. It's a nice snug fit, but I'm just gonna hollow it out a little bit just to loosen up the tolerances so there's no binding issues with the fork. And then since the factory axle for these razor wheels are actually 12 millimeters, I'm using these Delrin sleeves to fill in the gap between 12 millimeter and the 10 millimeter rod. So it should have a nice snug fit. After 10 minutes straight of hollowing the bracket out with a drill, now fits nice and smooth. Still very tight tolerances on both sides. Ready to mount. We now have the ski fully mounted on the fork. It's got some nice tight tolerances, no side to side play. The ski rotates on the front axle very smoothly. Just as a quick recap of what I'm using here, it's a M10 threaded rod. I chopped it about 1.5 inches short after I had everything tightened in place. I'm using nylon lined locking nuts and some washers on the outside. Keep it jammed in place on both sides of the fork. It's got a 12 millimeter, 10 millimeter sleeve in there just to reduce any sort of play. And then that's it. I'm thinking of adding a gas strut to mount here onto the adapter just to stabilize the movement and maybe limit it from going forward like that. I don't see a lot of people using that. It might not have a need for it, but I kind of want to make sure there's as much stability as possible. But before we do anything crazy like that, I kind of want to take this thing out just to see how it functions first. All right, guys, the ski bike is now ready to hit some snow, at least for its initial testing phase. It's 5 degrees out here in Virginia, but unfortunately we have not gotten any bit of snow yet. So while we're waiting, we're gonna be working on the 650 project again and continue optimizing that since I just got a bunch of parts in for it. If you enjoyed today's video or found it helpful in any way, do me a favor and hit that like button. If you like this kind of content, just want to keep up with any of my projects, consider subscribing to this channel. But this is going to be it for today. Thank you for watching and happy holidays.